Okay, so you do believe that you should have to justify the level of threat involved.
Yeah, but I'm very, very, very generous on that, if that makes sense. You can give me hypotheticals if you want to go from there so that we can be sure we're talking about the
Well,
same thing.
I don't have a necessarily a specific hypothetical, but my problem is if you're generous with that, that encourages people to kill the person that is breaking into their house.
Sure.
Because the problem is murdering them obviously, takes away their testimony.
Yeah. Oh. Um. Yeah, I guess it does. Well, rip. Better not break into people's houses then, I guess.
Unfathomably based. Here's the thing. Killing isn't ideal, but self-defense isn't optional. Some people want what's yours. Your body, your labor, your time, your property, and they're willing to use force, fraud, or intimidation to take it. Civilized people don't owe submission to predators.
No, I mean, I think it's crazy that you find it like your social contracting memes, right?
Yeah.
But like somebody breaks into your house and immediately the entire social contract meme is revoked.
I mean,
Your
I
right to
consider
life
breaking
is
into
out.
somebody's house to be like one of the largest affronts that you can do to another person's autonomy. I mean, you're invading their personal space. You could be doing it with lethal force. They don't know if you know that or not. They don't know what your intentions are. And you could oftentimes have a family at stake as well. So yeah, I consider breaking into somebody's house to be like a really, really, really big deal. Like one that would make like lethal force easily justified.
Liberty is non-negotiable. Peace is conditional. If you initiate force against me, against my body, my home, or what I traded my life energy to earn, you're the one creating the conflict. I worked for my money. I spent my time. I burned hours of my life doing things I would rather not do to build and keep what's mine. If criminals take your stuff, you can blast them.
Right. Okay. So what do you extend that to? So let's say you have a property, right, with grass, and then you have a fence up with a sign on it that says trespassers will be shot. Somebody jumps that fence. Do they lose their right to life?
No, jumping a fence doesn't automatically allow killing someone. A person could do that, but it's not a good idea. If you use wildly disproportionate violence, you become a liability to your neighbors. That makes your life worse. But being too passive is stupid too. If people learn they can violate your boundaries without consequence, they'll keep doing it. So the best answer is escalation that tracks the threat. Tell them to leave. If they refuse, escalate. If they become dangerous, escalate. Blasting them to smithereens is the last resort, not the first.
There's a difference. Okay. So let's say 24-year-old or okay, let's say a 64-year-old woman breaks into your house. Is it more? Are you morally justified in shooting that person?
Yeah, I would say so. When I say house, I just want to be clear, like breaking into like the area where you and your family sleeps or lives. Yes. Not like breaking into like a shed in the backyard or breaking into like your farm or your stables outside or something. Yeah.
Right. The reason that seems so problematic and arbitrary to me is, okay, so let's say, like I'm sure you, like many others, live in a house, right, where your bedrooms, where you sleep and your family sleeps, are very spread out from the entrance to your home. So why do you not have an obligation to as I was taught in my CCW class, to hunker down, to get into a room with your family and then have your door shut and locked, and then once they get through that door, then you're morally justified in shooting them. But why should you be able to seek them out in your house?
Because people value what's inside their house. More importantly, they value control over the place where they sleep, live, and keep the things their life depends on. The problem with this self-destructive empathy is that it teaches people to prioritize the criminal's safety over their own security. And criminals notice that. If crossing boundaries carries no serious consequence, then predation gets incentivized. That doesn't mean every violation gets instant death. It means once a line is crossed, consequences begin. And those consequences scale with the stakes. Stealing a phone is not the same thing as kicking in the door to the place where I sleep. A shed is not the same thing as a bedroom. A guy sneaking onto open land is not the same as an intruder inside the home. Context changes the threat, so context changes the response. The level of force depends on what the victim values, what they risk by hesitating, and what the intruder has already demonstrated by crossing that threshold. That is not arbitrary. It's the opposite of arbitrary. Action is always downstream of value. People don't act for no reason. They act to protect what matters to them. So when someone breaks into an occupied home, the victim is not obligated to surrender initiative, hide, and wait for the criminal to advance deeper into the house. That standard forces the victim to absorb more risk for the sake of the aggressor. And that's backwards. The intruder created the danger. The intruder created the uncertainty. The victim doesn't owe them safety.
Like, I would say that, well, if I'm in the process of raping somebody, I fully expect them to use lethal force to try to get me to stop. Like, much the same way that if I were to break...
That's self-defense. That's self-defense. You're attributing personal property into
to personhood?
I'm self-defending my property. I'm self-defending my saxophone.
I guess, like, maybe I have like a really, really high regard for personal property. Like, I would view those as almost like an extension of your person. Like, if somebody is like breaking onto your private property and stealing your private property, that's like a violation of your autonomy to some extent.
That's because property isn't just random stuff lying around. It's stored labor. It's hours of your life converted into something material. When you stand at a register, stock shelves, wash dishes, or do any job you wouldn't do for free, you're trading finite time and energy for money, and then trading that money for goods. So when someone steals your property, they're not just taking an object, they're taking the product of your effort, your discipline, your time, your life energy. Property is an extension of your agency and autonomy. It's part of how you project yourself into the world and preserve your interests over time. That's why people take theft seriously. They're not reacting to the object alone. They're reacting to the life that the object represents.
Of course, it's avoidable.
Mm-hmm.
You're saying between these two choices, should I lose some things that have material value, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not trying to trivialize that. Of course, it's an egregious crime, and of course, that's why it's a felony. But the problem is, you're saying that leap they lose their right to life at that point.
Yeah.
Because they broke into your farmhouse.
Yeah.
How do you morally justify that?
Because they're breaking into my shit. Fuck them.
Based OG destiny.
Like, I think requesting somebody or compelling somebody to give up their property to a thief is that's for me, that's an unacceptable request. That I could never morally compel somebody to say, listen, you just have to let them drive away with your car because it's not right for you to stop them using lethal force. You just have to give it up. I don't believe that that's a request that I could make of somebody or that should be made of somebody.
At the end of the day, criminals are not kept in line by morality or magical beliefs. They're kept in line by consequences. A society that keeps giving the benefit of the doubt to the aggressor while demanding surrender from the victim is training people to prey on the civilized. That's unstable. So when conflict is forced, the presumption should favor the person defending what's theirs, not the person trying to take it. I'm not interested in a social standard that tells people, sorry, just let the thief have your car. That's an absurd demand. It protects the predator and punishes the civilized. In reality, the threat of force normally solves conflict before it gets too violent. Most criminals value their life, comfort, and convenience. They back down when they believe the victim will resist. That's the whole point. Deterrence works because consequences are visible. So, no, none of this is ideal. But between two bad outcomes, hurting a criminal is less socially destructive than allowing crime to become routine. When you sacrifice the victim, you don't get peace. You get more crime.
To expand on this a little bit, because it's a pretty extreme point of view. You're like stuff that you've acquired, stuff that you own. This is just how I view it. And I understand not everybody might not agree with this, but like if you have something, it represents like. Do you ever watch Outlaw Star?
Never.
Okay, in Outlaw Star, he's got like a special gun, and it can load shells into it, and they're called caster shells. And every time he shoots it at an enemy, it like takes away some of his life force. Okay, in order for the gun to function, right? I feel like in real life, your possessions are things that represent hours of your life that you've spent working to acquire. And not just like going to the store and buying them, but let's say you have like a $900 phone or an $800 phone, right? You've spent, potentially 100 hours or hundreds of hours with tax included maybe working at a place to acquire these possessions. These are things that you own. You've given your life. Literally, hours of your life have been poured into acquiring these things. For somebody to walk up and to presume on you and to just take that, to rip that away from you, I view that as like an affront of one of the absolute worst kinds of things that you could do to people. Stealing somebody's possessions, to me, is like one of the worst things that you can do to somebody. It's not just like, I guess like some people just view it, or maybe people view possessions in like different ways, but like to walk up to somebody and to tear away hours of their life that they've spent trying to procure something, and then feeling like that person should be able to leave with their life intact, like, I don't know, it's one of the worst things to me.